Today, we will talk about building and evolving your company culture. And I will take the example of Alan to be as concrete as possible. So why does Alan exist first? Because we think that the health system can't keep up with the way we live, and that the system is jammed, and that it is getting worse. And at the same time, we live faster, we live longer, and we accept delightful experiences. So Alan's goal is to reimagine the health system by creating a better flow centered on the individual. And we want to be people, friends in health. We want to be their partner in the system so that they can do the best choices for them around the health. And most of you probably know Alan because we are an health insurance. And it's true, we started by building an health insurance that with the ambition to make the experience simpler, more transparent, more free, fairer than what already exists on the market. And we are the only independent insurance licensed in France since 1986. But for us, this is only a start. And we want to build new services so that people can make better choices for them around their health, being it in terms of access to care or in terms of prevention. So now that you have the context, I want to answer to a second question. And the second question is, why did I decide to talk about company culture? And in fact, the answer lies in the following question: what is specific about Alan? And I'm sure you have the answer. Definitely, if it's its company culture. Alan made the choice from day one to have a strong company culture, and I truly believe that it is one of our greatest assets. Which leads me to the subject of this talk, building and evolving your company culture. So what will we talk about? Then first I'll remind you what company culture actually means, because a lot of people have different definitions. I will give you my definition. And also I will explain you why I think it is important to build a strong company culture. Disclaimer, my goal is not to be too theoretical, so we won't go too deep, too far on the theoretical aspects of it. I'll rather explain you my comprehension of it, and I will take concrete example about what we do at Alan. And then I will be even more concrete, and I'll talk about Alan, and I'll try to answer the following questions. How did we build our company culture? What is it? What concrete impacts does it have on our working methodologies, on our product, on our business, on hiring? And then I'll talk about how our company culture evolved over time, and how we handle that change. What does company culture mean? And I love this quote from Dr. Cameron Separ: your company's culture is who you hire, fire, and promote. And the first thing is that your company culture is concrete. It's not about who you say you are, but it's about what people choices you make day in and day out. It's the behaviors that you promote, that you reward, and that you accept in your company. But it is also the behaviors that you don't tolerate in your company. If your vision is your why, your product is your what, your company culture is your how. And your company culture has impact on the way you work and on the decisions you make, and it is defined by them. So let's take some examples of what are the things that are part of company culture. For example, do you allow remote working? Do you do regular one-on-ones between managers and managees? Do you have managers at all? Is it possible for your employees to come to Station F, do a talk, and is it considered to be part of their work? All of this is your company culture. These are big things and small things. It can be also like, do people hang out for lunch together? But as I told you, it's also what you don't tolerate. For example, let's say you have a very good performing employee, a rock star employee, but who plays solo, who is not a great team player. Will you promote them or not? About something you can tolerate or not, I can show you an example at Alan. For example, we had a candidate who met with a female business developer for an interview. And when leaving the office, he said to our chief financial officer, like to a guy leaving the office, I hope that they, women, are all as pretty as her. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was quite shocking. And for us, it was a no-brainer. This candidate was out, we wouldn't go further with her. So that's part of your culture. And what is also part of the culture is that our CFO didn't keep it for himself, he shared it with the team. He could have kept it for himself, but he decided to share it with the team so that we don't go further with the candidate, no matter how good he was. So who in this room has a company culture? Nobody? Okay. You all have a company culture. A very important point is that every company has a company culture, even if it is unconscious. There are as many methods and practices as there are companies and company stages. For example, in my former company, we had no conscious company culture. It was a video game development studio. We didn't say we have a company culture. But every day at lunch, people played video games together. This was and this is their company culture, or part of their company culture. So the idea of my talk is not to answer the question, do you need a company culture? Every company has a company culture, but why is it important to build a company culture consciously and to build a strong company culture? A third point that is important is that company culture is not the same as values. So someone talked about values, this is linked, but this is not the same. In fact, values are at the basis of company culture. Values are less tangible. They are not behaviors, but they are also very important. If you have strong values, they will guide your everyday decision making. They will shape your company culture. But values are not supposed to be hanging on a wall. They don't need to be hanging on a wall, to be honest. At Alan, we don't have values on the wall. We don't say every day, or we don't read every day our values. But values need to have an impact on the decision you make and on the way you work. If it's not the case, your values are useless and they don't shape your culture. So I like this quote from the CEO of Zappos. We believe that it's really important to come up with core values that you can commit to. And by commit, we mean that you're willing to hire and fire based on them. It's not only about hiring or firing, it's also about your strategy, it's also about your product. Basically, every decision that you make as a company happens through the lens of what you value as a company. And to take an example, at Alan, one of our core values is radical transparency. We have a review process every 6 months, and basically, for our teammates, we'll give you formal feedback, and this is similar to a 360-degree evaluation. It impacts directly your level in the company, and it impacts directly your compensation. So it's an important subject. It can be a tricky one. It was suggested that we make part of this process not transparent anymore. And we discussed about that. At the end of the day, we decided to keep full transparency on the process because it was linked and it was aligned with one of core value, which is radical transparency. So long story short, your values are rather stable. Your culture is shaped by your values, and your culture can evolve as you go. Of course, it's great to reevaluate your values from time to time to make sure that you stay true to your value. So for example, at Alan, we did it once, a bit more than 1 year ago. We did a survey to understand what were the most important values in people's head and what values we maybe didn't live on the day-to-day. And as a founder or as an HR person, you can have impact, you can have an influence on your culture by defining your core values and by rewarding some behaviors or by not tolerating other behaviors. So now that I have defined what company culture means, I will explain why it is important to build a strong company culture. And again, my goal is not to be too theoretical, so I will mostly share the three main reasons that are important to me. There are many other reasons. You could find many other reasons to have a strong company culture. And the first one is that it helps making conscious decisions as a team on an otherwise very unconscious process. So as I told you, every company has a company culture. Defining your values and building a strong culture is a good way to align your people on it. Make sure that everybody in your company understands why you make some choices, and make sure that everybody in the company knows what choices to make when they are faced with specific situations. If we take the radical transparency example at Alan, for example, a few weeks ago, we had a bug on our product, which impacting a lot our users because we could not reimburse them automatically like it is supposed to work. So we discussed as a team, part of the team discussed what to do about it, and we decided to communicate super transparently with our users because this is in alignment with our values, and there was no discussion about it. This was super natural for us to do that. Personally, I know that people at Alan, if they can make different choices for a specific situation, they will always make the choice, which is aligned with our values and with the radical transparency value. The second point is that it helps you make difficult decisions on hiring. And you'll be able to hire the best people for you and do it consciously. For example, let's say that you value radical transparency, like we do at Alan. If that's the case, you should only hire people who can adapt to it in a few months and not hire people who are not aligned with this principle, no matter how good technically they are. If you don't, either it won't work with the people who are not aligned with your culture, and they will leave after a few weeks, and it will be detrimental to your business, to your team. Or if you hire too many people who are not aligned with your core values will soon disappear, and you will not leave them day to day. And the third point is that overall studies show that it has a positive impact on your business. What we see at Alan, from my perspective as a recruiter, are two things. First, it helps us recruit faster because a lot of people apply at Alan because they love our company culture. Disclaimer about it, not everybody needs to love your company culture. Some people cannot love it, some people can hate it, and that's good, in fact, because you want people who are aligned with you. I strongly believe that it's better to have maybe 50% of people who love your culture, 20% of people who are neutral about your culture, and 30% of people who hate your culture, rather than having 100% of people who don't care. And we have also a strong employee engagement because we build a strong sense of belonging, and it has a direct impact on our team performance. So this was what is the company culture. This was why is it important. Now I will try to be more concrete about Alan's company culture so that you can understand what it means concretely day to day for us. First, before we talk about what are they, maybe how did we define them, and what advice can I give you to do that? So at Alan, our values were defined from day one by our two co-founders. So it was easy. There were two people that defined the values. Our values haven't changed since the start, so it was a bit more than 3 years ago. Even so, the culture has evolved, and I will come back to it later. About when defining the values, as a startup, I believe the earlier the better. For two reasons, it will have a positive impact and make it easier for you to take difficult decisions. And although it's way easier to define your values when you are few people than you are a bigger team. About how to define your values, there is probably no right way. I strongly believe that it should come from the founders, but if you already have a team, I believe that's the best way to co-define them with your team to make sure that you are true to your values. So I will present you now our values and give you concrete examples of how they translate concretely in real life. So We have 4 values: fearless ambition, distributed ownership, radical transparency, personal and community growth. And everything is about trust. And this is the most important thing for us, and we built our culture on that. Trust is not one of our values, but it's a direct consequence of it. If you take fearless ambition, what does it mean? It means that we like to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because we are super ambitious. It means that nothing is too big for us. We believe that every problem can be solved quickly when it is broken into small pieces. And we evolve in an industry with a lot of rules, with a lot of regulation, and our role is to break those rules. And the first impact that this value has on Alan is on our business, on our strategy. As I told you, it's not only about health insurance. We consider ourselves, and we have way bigger ambitions than just doing a new health insurance. And it can sound a bit crazy, especially when you are so small like Alan right now. And we could have said we are just building a great health insurance, which would already have been a great challenge. And it would probably have been the case if fearless ambition was not one of our values. Another example is that we never give up, and we have a lot of examples, concrete examples, where we have not given up, and we share it with the team. So we have a lot of examples about prospects, future clients that we thought we lost, and that by fighting, we convinced to sign. We have a lot of examples from people who turned down our offer at first, people we wanted to hire, and that we managed to convince to join our team. So I won't share all the stories, but this is very important, and we share it with the team, and this is something also important when you have your values. It's always important to share about concrete examples that are linked to your values. The second is distributed ownership. It means that we trust everybody in the team to make the best decisions for the company. And everybody is given the freedom to take actions, and everybody is responsible for them. And concretely, what does it mean? First, we are all shareholders of Alan. We all have equity in Alan, and therefore we are all owners of Alan. Second, there is no traditional management organization at Alan. Nobody will tell you what to do and how to do it. Each topic has an owner, and the owner takes the final decision no matter who they are in the company. It can be someone junior, someone senior, someone experienced at Alan, someone not experienced. We trust this person to make the best decision for the company. Of course, owners are expected to listen to the feedback, but we don't seek for unanimity. And everybody decides what they will work on. Again, we challenge each other, but at the end of the day, we trust each other to work on the things that are the most important for the company. A third thing, which is linked to decentralized distributed ownership, it's extreme flexibility. We had unlimited vacation. We can do as much as remote work as we want. 2 rules only: as long as you do your work, your job, and as long as it is not negative for the teamwork, you can do whatever you want. The third value is radical transparency. So basically, everything is accessible to everybody. We believe that transparency is powerful, and this is the basis of trust. And we are transparent with our users, and we are committed to radical transparency and on everything internally. And it has an impact on how we communicate with our clients. So this is an example. Maybe twice a year, we publish a blog article with our business figures. It has an impact on our product. Health insurance is not a transparent world. It's often very complicated to know how much you will get reimbursed, for example. We decided to make it super easy for our users to know how much they will be reimbursed if they see a doctor. We have a salary and equity grid. This is transparent. This is accessible to everybody externally, and all salaries, all levels at Alan are accessible to everybody internally. We value controversial opinions, and we have adopted the a direct and honest style of communication, and we follow the radical candor principle. We ask everybody to challenge directly and transparently, while caring personally for the people. But often at Alan, you will share public feedback in a very transparent manner, for positive things, for negative things. But it's very important for us. We communicate transparently about our failures internally. So, for example, when we need to part ways with somebody, we will explain to the team why we have decided to fire someone. And it's very, very, very important for us to make sure that everybody can understand the why of such decisions and everybody can react about those decisions. And in fact, radical transparency forces us to talk about difficult topics. We can't hide behind our little fingers and just say, okay, it's not an issue. If we need to discuss about something, we'll discuss about it. Something which is linked to transparency is that we don't believe that meetings are very efficient. And that's why we decided to take most of our decisions in writing. And it makes it easier to be transparent and to learn from our mistakes over time. And what we do is that we take a lot of decisions through GitHub issues. Instead of doing meeting, someone will open an issue, give the scope of the issue, what problem do I want to solve, give some context on material, make a proposal, ping some people, and people will react in a written form. It can maybe last 2 days, and at the end, after the owner of the issue has gathered all the feedback, they will close the issue and take a decision and write a conclusion around the topic. And the last value is personal and community growth. We think that keeping and improving ourselves individually and collectively is the safest path to success. And some examples around that. The Alan library, everybody at Alan can buy a book with the money of the company. And we trust everybody. I mean, you can do whatever you want, in fact. Everybody has a budget to attend conferences. And everybody can teach classes and have a speaking budget. And these are only examples. We could find many, many other examples. So these are our values. Those were examples of our values translate concretely in the day-to-day life. But as I told you, your company culture evolves. At Alan, we ask everybody to embrace the company culture, to understand the why of it. But then everybody needs to appropriate the culture. And people don't work exactly the same way, and that's good, in fact, because thanks to that, the company culture evolves. And you don't work the same way when you are 15 people or when you are 130 people like we are right now. So here are some things which evolved. For example, so we have this no meeting rule, but we are starting to do a bit more meetings, especially stand-up meetings, because it's important for us as we go to synchronize a bit more in real life. We also now have a big all-hands meeting every month to share about what we have achieved during the month, to celebrate successes, to celebrate failures, to recognize people who did great job. And this is not something we add so often at the beginning of the company. Before, we had only individual contributors, so we had no management. Now we still have no managers, but we have now leads who are there to support their team on hiring, on coaching, on making sure that best practices are shared among the team. So they are more here to manage the organizational aspects of the work, because it was needed as we grew. We beginning to have quite big teams, so it was needed. But distributed ownership is still our value. Leads do not have the final say on topics that are owned by other people, and they don't set objectives for individuals. Individuals set objectives for themselves. But at the end of the day, our values stay the same. So how do we do it? And how can you keep your values and your company culture? So first, we implemented behavioral interviews. So this is a specific interview in our hiring process to assess the candidates against behavioral traits that we have defined. The goal is to dig deeper on the candidate experiences, to understand in which environments they like to work, to understand if Alan can be a good environment for them and what they can bring us. So again, the goal is not to recruit clones or always the same people. You don't need the candidate to fit perfectly with your company culture, but you need them to be able to adapt to it. And we value cultural contribution. So for me, the perfect candidate is someone who is able to adapt to the culture and change it at the same time. Second thing that we do is that onboarding is key. So we created an Alan starter guide for everybody who joins the team, where we share everything people need to know about the company, about the business, about the vision, about the product, about the culture, about how we do things at Alan. Another example of things we have done is that everybody has a culture buddy. So the culture buddy is here to help the newcomer understand Alan's culture during their onboarding process. It's not a role buddy, so there is another person who is responsible to help the person on board on their job. So these are examples of things we do.
So I have a first question on the transparency for salaries. So I think I understand how valuable it can be when you start being at scale. So you hire more people and you have more people working for you and so on. I see the value in that. Now, the concern I have is I believe that if you try to hire the outliers, the people who will go for the extra mile, who don't want to be put in a box and are ready to, give more and deliver more, they might feel frustrated or constrained by, something like this system where everything is written. At some point they will fall into a box, and it seems fairly clear and transparent how they can move from one to the other. So there are specific rules and you can't really go around them. So it feels like there's a tension between, taking this solution for the general case, but you might lose the opportunity for the exceptional individuals who won't really fit in this system and want to go faster and want to go from box A to C without a transition. Do you know what I mean? So I'm wondering if you see that internally and if this can become a problem at some point where you really need those exceptional individuals.
So I think there are two topics: transparency and having a career path on the salary grid. Because you can have transparency on salaries, but not have, like we have also at Alan, a salary grid when you have a level and you can go up on the level. So these are for me two different topics, because you can have also a salary grid and not be transparent about it. And I think your question is more about the salary grid and the levels than the transparency aspect. Honestly, I'm not an expert on that. I don't think it's prevented us at Alan to hire exceptional individuals. On the contrary, I think we have exceptional individuals at Alan. And I think it depends how you define your levels and what criteria you have in it. Of course, there is a tendency when you have such a system to put people in boxes, because you need to define what it means to be, for example, a level C0 engineer, what it means to be a level C1, level D, level E engineer. That's right, but it brings clarity. And what we have found at Alan is that we focus on the outcome and on the impact of the individual on the company, and not on what you master or skills you master. So I believe that if you focus on impact, it's not really a problem. But again, I'm not an expert on the topic.
I'd like to come back on the notion of defining values. You mentioned that founders should do it, but you didn't really dive into like examples of the process of doing so. Is it only about like personality of the founders, or is there like a method or maybe a couple methods that you would recommend?
So I'm not a founder, so I think it's up to you. when I say that it needs to be defined by the founder, or at least founder needs to be aligned with them, it's because I think, like, as a founder, you are the guide of your company. You are the people who have the vision and who should lead the way in your company. It depends if you have employees or not. What you can do, for example, if you have employees, is to do workshops or survey to see what are the values that are important to them, see what are the values that come often, and see what unites people in your company. So this is a good way to do it, for example. If you're only two founders, you need to think about, okay, what is truly important to me? I mean, for me, in terms of values, personal values, but more at work, because we don't speak about religion or political values. It has nothing to do with that. And for example, myself, one of the things that made me join Alan is that radical transparency is super important to me. And this is a no-brainer. This was a no-brainer for me. And if I created my own company, it would be one of the value of my company. So I think it depends if you have a team or not. If you are only 1, 2, 3 people, just discuss about it together and define them as concretely as possible, and think about the behaviors that you want to have. What does it mean concretely? If it's just a vague wording, it doesn't make any sense. It won't have impact. And if you have a team, the best way to do it is to receive the feedback of the team, see what comes often, and define them with the team.
So my question is about kind of the growth you're experiencing. So when you're bringing on, a couple of people, let's say a year, or a couple of people a month, I would imagine it's much easier to like transfer, mold them into the company culture. But when you're bringing on, let's say, like 10 people a month or whatever, so have you noticed any kind of breakdowns or any changes you've made in the process of actually, like, in the onboarding process?
Yeah. So it's true, it's easier to onboard 1 or 2 people per month than 10 or more than 10 people per month. Our onboarding process changed a lot. Didn't change in the fundamentals of the onboarding process, but it became, and it is becoming more and more professional, I would say. Before we had no trainings, now we have trainings for people, for example. The starter guides that I showed you didn't exist before a few months ago, for example. We had already a lot of documentation, but not a specific starter guide for people, for example. We praise, it's a bit different, but during all ends meeting, we praise all newcomers. We present every newcomers. Some things that we already had, but that has become more important, is that we do a breakfast. I mean, we onboard people the first Monday and the third Monday of the month, and we do a breakfast on Monday with all the people, so that newcomers can present themselves, can meet the team, for example. So a lot of small things that we implemented, a lot of small things over time, and the main idea is that it became more professional. And we hired someone a few weeks ago, we joined soon, to focus first on the onboarding process, to do V2, I would say, of our onboarding process. So it's becoming an important issue for us to iterate on it. But
you mentioned, I think, that you have a lot of remote. For kind of remote employees or employees who or is that true or not? Is it that? Okay, but I'm saying, like, for remote employees, how do you manage the cultural transition?
So we are not a full remote company. So we have some remote employees, but most of our employees are in Paris. What we do about remote work, we have 2 things. Employees who are in Paris or mostly in Paris. If you want to stay home one day, you can, and you don't need to justify yourself. And a lot of people at Alan do 2-3 days a week remote work, even though they live in Paris. But they can come easily to the office if needed. And then we have some full-time, or almost full-time remote employee. What we ask them is to come at the beginning of their contract with Alan, to spend the first 2 weeks with us, full time because it's super important for their onboarding in terms of meeting with people, in terms of understanding the culture, but also just being, working with other people. And then we define guidelines so that they go progressively to remote work. We ask them to come to spend 20% of their time at the office. It can be 1 day a week, it can be 2 days every 2 weeks, it can be 1 week per month. We trust everybody to make the best choice for them and for the company, but we ask everybody to come regularly to the office so that they can keep, so they can keep the meeting with people in the company. It would be different if you were a full remote company with no office, but like we experience remote work on a lot of us. I mean, a few of people at Alan experience remote work, and we are convinced that remote work is something which is great and that every company should do, and we will probably do even more than that in the future. But when most of the team is in a headquarters, it's important for remote employees to come regularly to the office. But we are very careful about the onboarding period, which is the most important period, in fact.
Okay, and just going just a little bit further in that remote work part, I just have 2 questions. The first one is about like your headquarters space, your office space. You know, when you have a lot of people just having 2 or 3 days working from home per week or something, how can you plan like your office space, like the office space, basically? Because some days you can have nobody, and other days the office could be just crowded. And when you are growing, you know, in a very fast speed, how you manage all that movement and dynamic? That's one question. And the other one is about the behavioral interview. If it's, you know, if it's made by a person, I don't know, or if you use some kind of tool to do it, and if you do it after, you know, maybe the person is still is in the company for 2 or 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, to, you know, track some changes about, you know, something.
So about the question on the office place, everybody has a place at Alan, I would say. Sometimes the office can feel a bit empty. It's becoming less and less true because we are more and more people. I would say that maybe 30 people per day maybe are working remotely, but you still have 100 people in the office. So it's not, I mean, not the majority of people choose to work remotely. We have the choice to do it, but what you notice when you offer people to work remotely as they want, many people come to the office. For example, I could work remotely almost every day. Today I'm remote, but I think it's the first time that I work remotely since 2 months. So it's not really an issue, to be honest. Then about the behavioral interview, so we have this interview during our hiring process. So to explain you our hiring process, we do first a first screening, which is a first short interview to make sure that we are aligned on the track records, we are aligned on the motivation of the people, of the candidate. Then we have written questions because it's because of our culture, which is very important to understand how people write and structure their thoughts in a written form and in English, because English is our working language. Then we do a technical interview. And then we do the behavioral interview. And after that, we do reference checks. And we do an on-site interview. Basically, we ask people and we offer people to come 1 day to our office to spend the day with us. Our goal is to be super transparent with candidates so that they can make the best choice for them at the end of the hiring process. And we have not found a better way to be transparent to offer to candidates to come 1 full day in our office. And the behavioral interview is performed by employees of Alan that are trained to run this interview. We have some rules so that people can become behavioral interviewers. You need to be at Alan since more than 6 months so that you understand the culture, so that you can talk about the culture. And you need to be trained. And at first, if you want to lead this interview, you will first shadow other people. So you will attend the interview, but you won't lead them. once you have shadowed maybe twice or 2 or 3 times the interview, you will be able to lead the interview, but with being reverse shadowed by someone with more experience than you. And once you have done it several times, and once people tell you, okay, you're ready, you can lead the interview on your own, you can. And then your second question was, how do we assess it after that? We don't do an interview after that, but what we do is that during the onboarding period, we don't assess people, but we do some reviews. So after 6 weeks, after 3 months, or after 6 months, we do a review for each newcomer. Basically, this is like the review process I talked to you about. So 4 people, you will, as a newcomer, ask 4 people to do a review of your first 6 weeks, then the 6 following weeks, and then the 3 following months. And people will give you feedback on your performance, your strength, what you could have done to achieve more, advices on what to keep in mind for the next review cycle. And people will assess your impact, your performance, but also people will assess and will give you feedback on the culture and how you behave in the company. Okay, we need to end. Okay. Thanks a lot.